Hey Daml Hublers, David Richards here. I'm the product manager responsible for Daml Hub. In this video, I'm going to take you through a theoretical example for user management and show you how you can manage users and their rights in the Daml Hub console. Now, before user management, applications had to use multi-party tokens, and the rights of a particular user were managed within the token itself. Amongst other drawbacks, this meant that if the rights of a user needed to change, a right was taken away, for example, then the token itself needed to be changed. With the introduction of the concept of users and user management to Daml, if the rights of a user need to change, then the token doesn't need to be changed. The relationship of users to parties moves into the ledger itself rather than in the token. Now I'm going to show you an example from the Daml Hub docs to show you how you can manage dynamic group behavior in the Daml Hub console. So here's the ledger that I've created for the purposes of this demo. You can get onto the ability to manage parties and users on the Identities tab here on the left-hand side. So we have the Parties tab here, we have the Users tab here, and we also have Service Accounts. Now, Service Accounts tab is where you can create credentials to automate the actions for specific parties. We're not going to go into that in this demo. You can read about that in the Daml Hub documentations. So now here on the Users tab, we have our default users that are created with every ledger. Again, we're not going to go through this, but you can read about it in the Daml Hub documentation. So in this demo, we're going to create 3 users. We have Alice, Bob, and Charlie. Now, Alice, Bob, and Charlie all work for the same company. They all have, as I've just created, a user and a presence on the ledger. Now, general practice is to also give these users their primary party and associate act as and read as rights for their associated party. Now, I created those parties before this demo just to make it smoother, and so what I'm going to do now is associate Alice's she can act as her party and also read as her party, give her the act as and read as rights for her primary party. I'm going to do the same for Bob. So like you just saw, to do that, you click on the user on the left-hand tab. This right-hand screen opens up and you can then associate those act as and read as rights to those users. So give Bob his read as and act as rights, and lastly, I'll do the same for Charlie. Now, in this organization, both Alice and Bob are managers. And so what we can do is associate, again, another pre-made party called manager to Alice and also to Bob. And what that means is they have the ability to read those contracts which involve a manager in their organization. So given them those rights. So imagine now we build those into the application. We can now use the JOTs and things to authenticate as those users. Now, like in any organization, Alice changes roles, stays within the company, but is no longer a manager, and Charlie takes on those responsibilities. So what we're going to do here is take Alice and we're going to remove that manager right from Alice, and we're going to apply it to Charlie. Now, because we've used the tokens for the users and not directly for the parties, we don't need to change the user token. The rights for Alice and Charlie have been changed on the ledger. So when they authenticate as those users, the ledger knows which rights they have, and therefore Alice can no longer view the party contracts of the manager, and Charlie now can. So as those rights have been changed and altered between those users, we don't need to change the tokens that we authenticate as. That all happens directly on the ledger, and the ledger has that mapping between those users and those parties, which can obviously be managed in Daml Hub through the Daml Hub console here. Now, everything I've done, in fact, let's claim that Charlie now didn't like being a manager, found a role in another organization. We can come here, simply delete the user, and therefore that token will no longer work and that user no longer exists on the ledger. Now, all of those actions that I've shown here in the Daml Hub console can also be automated through our supported and documented HTTP APIs, And so this is on the HTTP API documentation tab. So we have all of those in user management here and all of the APIs which are supported. We then have the OpenAPI spec for those, so you can see those APIs in the middle here, the responses and the examples on the right hand side. Now this is just a very simple example of how you can manage users and those rights and parties without having to mess around with tokens and change those all the time depending on the rights that are and roles that have changed for those users.